Hi everyone, and welcome along to another episode on the LOPSided Podcast, or the LOPPrided Podcast. We're celebrating Pride, and within that celebration, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by one of the shining lights in law. And we'll get on to the interlaw work in a while. It's Dan Winterfeldt. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to being educated, quite frankly, Dan, on our subject around trust, transparency, and transformation. The GC as an operations innovator, and I'm lucky enough to have worked firsthand with you in our time at a little US firm, and then worked on the other side supporting you at another firm, and now at another firm that, luckily enough for me, is still working with you. And
it's a small legal and legal ops world.
It's a very small legal and legal ops work. So first, let's start with you. So I have these questions I asked everybody. Who is your hero?
Great. Well, I'd say one of my legal heroes is Baroness Patricia Scotland.
Okay.
I think Patricia is amazing. She started from coming from the Caribbean, from a family of 12. A devout Catholic, came to the UK, became a barrister, was the youngest woman ever to take silk, went on to become Attorney General under Gordon Brown, then became Secretary General of the Commonwealth for the past 8 years. She just stepped down and went back into the House of Lords. All throughout that time, Patricia has been passionate about fighting for the rights of women, particularly fighting domestic violence, fighting for the rights of children, standing up for LGBT plus rights. She really is a real ally and a real supporter of equality across the board. And obviously she's done a lot of work as a Black woman around race and supporting women and women of color. And her legal journey alone is that of excellence, but also she has that record of supporting people, being an ally. She stepped forward very early on in my work with the Interlaw Diversity Forum and came forward and found me at a charity event. She said, I've heard about you and the work you've been doing. I really want to support you. Tell me what I can do. And, this is 17 years ago, when people didn't understand why a straight Black woman would want to be supporting an LGBT plus organization. Obviously, Interlaw has expanded now to do a lot more. But I think that Patricia has come over a lot of adversity. She's done it with grace. She's done huge, high accomplishments in the face of people challenging her. Yeah, I really, really admire her and what she's accomplished, and she's not done yet. So I'm excited to see what she's going to continue to do moving forward. But she's definitely been a huge supporter of me as an individual, a huge supporter of the work that I do. And she's opened many doors, in front of and behind the scenes to help what I do. And especially in the early days when I was quite a brand new salaried partner running around doing work with, major law firms, in-house teams, with the SRA, with the Law Society, with the Bar Council. She definitely, kind of gave me that support and legitimacy that I needed in order to do the work I did. So I think it's that her journey inspires me, but also I think the kind of person she is and her morals and her ethics. And I also love that she's a person of faith, and that's really important to her. And I think that really, guides her to really care about people, be compassionate, and so to me, she kind of embodies all the things that I look for.
Dan, that's amazing. An amazing person. So I think, or I feel this, this one could be many things, but what's your greatest accomplishment?
So I think it's hard to narrow that down to one thing, but I do think the fact that I've been able to have a successful legal career, and I think quite a traditional profession, I think I've been able to define what success looks like for me. And I also think the fact that I've been able to take, the privilege that I have and the success that I have and turn that around to help and support others and to drive change within the profession is hugely important to me. So I think it's important that I've done well and I'm proud of myself and where I am in my career, but I'm even more proud of my ability to help and support others both in front of and behind the scenes through the work that I do.
Amazing. And the most important question of all, which song would you sing on a team karaoke night out?
So I have had a large hits singing American Life by Madonna, especially because I do the rap very well in the middle. And I think that's probably it. There's another one, but I can't think of it now. But yes, but I did do very well at a legal night out at karaoke.
Very nice.
But I'm not a good singer. I just love to sing, but I'm terrible at it.
One of my favorite songs, Madonna, Borderline.
Borderline's a good one. I could do Borderline if you made me. I could do it.
I'm definitely going to make you do that next time. So, which job would you trade your current role for without a second glance?
Ooh, that's a hard question. So, I love my job. I'm really, really happy in it. What would I trade it for in a heartbeat? So, I'm not saying that I'm qualified to do this job, but I genuinely love legal operations. So, I think going into a job where I was sort of maybe like a GC plus head of legal ops plus kind of like a chief of staff role for a CEO, I think would be interesting. So to kind of continue doing the legal work I do, but expand that out into operations, but also maybe into kind of people work, and that chief of staff could be interesting. So operations from the people perspective.
Yeah, I could see that. I see you as a bit of a kind of Swiss Army knife of that legal kind of in-house piece. You think quite think quite in depth naturally about the operational pieces, don't you? In conversations we've had, you're definitely a bigger picture guy.
Well, I think you can't really do an in-house role without understanding or embracing legal ops. I do genuinely think it's now a critical and essential part of what we do if you want to do it well. But I also have to say, sometimes I kind of miss private practice. So there are moments when I think, God, I miss being a partner at a law firm. I really miss that. Because what you kind of give up when you are in-house is you give up that business development side and that marketing side. I mean, you could argue that you're marketing internally to your internal clients, but really you know where your work's coming from. And that's more about building relationships with your existing clients. You're not out there sourcing work, sourcing opportunities. You don't need to build your brand. I do miss that a little bit. So there are moments where I miss private practice a little bit.
Okay. So let's talk a bit about your personal journey, and it's a fascinating one. Can you share a bit about that, your journey as an LGBTQ plus professional? Any defining moments that shaped your career path?
Ooh, okay. So, I mean, I've been out my whole career, so I haven't really had. So I came out in undergraduate in university. So in America, you do 4 years of university, then you do 3 years of law school. You get a JD. It's an advanced. It's like a graduate degree. So I've been out since my junior year of university. It was a long time ago, so that was 1992. So, okay, that's a long time, isn't it? So I didn't really have a choice but to be out. So and I felt like once I came out, it was impossible for me to not be out. I know there are people who have gone out and then gone back in, but there's also different levels of out and different kinds of out. You might be out in your private life, but not out in your work life. I think everyone has to do what works for them. But for me, once I was out, to me, there was no choice about going back. I always think that when you're out, there are, of course, downsides to being out, but there's also a lot of upsides. So if you're not out, you don't get to be part of network groups. You don't get to build a network inside and outside of your organization. In your personal life, you won't have that network of people who support you, both people in the community, but also allies, as we talked about. If I wasn't out, if I hadn't gone to a Stonewall charity event 17 years ago, I wouldn't have met Baroness Scotland on the dance floor, who then came forward and said, I want to be, a supporter of your work, and I want to support what you're doing. And I'm proud of that. And likewise, people like Tim Hales, who was our first patron in Interlaw, who at the time was a general counsel at JP Morgan, who was our very first patron and who spoke at our launch event, along with the then head of Stonewall, Ben Summerskill. That was, I would have lost on that. So you gain so much. So there might be downsides, but I feel like the upside outweighs the downside. But of course, it's all an individual decision. It depends what country you live in. It depends what organization you work in. It depends who your clients are. It is a very individual choice around you, your family, maybe your belief system. It's complex. So there's not one answer for anyone. But for me, being out has been a big part of my journey, and I acknowledge the downsides. But I've learned to do as I'm older is acknowledge what the upsides are and the benefits as well.
So I find this fascinating because from a professional point of view, as you say, you came out pretty early on in a professional environment. How do you? I mean, it was a very different world back then to be out. Was it not in a professional environment? How did you faced kind of navigating that from an early point? I mean,
Well, so early on, so I went to law school in New York at Fordham,
mhm,
and being out there was relatively challenging. And
mhm,
then being out, I mean, being out, it was the 90s. So it was 95 to 98. I was in law school at Fordham in New York. Um, there were definitely challenges about that. I mean, there were challenges just about being LGBT plus in law school. It was a Jesuit law school. Um, there were great supporters of me in law school, but there were also detractors and people had issues with me being gay. Um, it impacted my grade in two courses that I was in, very obviously. And so that then made it harder for me to get a job and to go on with my career. I was able to make it um, by sort of creating other opportunities, by working hard, and by having allies who helped me. So again, I had negative experiences, but then I had allies who came along to support me in the wake of those. So overall, I had an interesting experience. We also had to advocate for the LGBT plus network during my first year of law school to join the diversity committee.
mhm.
There were racial and ethnic minority networks, but the LGBT network was not part of that committee. So we had to work with the dean and meet with those groups. And it was a big part of the work I did in my first year of law school. So without realizing it, I ended up marching in the Pride Parade in New York in 1995. But actually, that would have been 96. I remember, I mean, it was very political. I mean, it was not a party. There were no floats. There were no go-go dancers. It was political signs marching down the street. I remember being terrified walking down the street with a sign, thinking I'm going to get put on lists. I'm going to get uh, the government could be taking my picture and identifying me, um, and it being really scary. And I was afraid that we would be attacked or people might throw things at us. I was literally sweating bullets and scared to death, but I did it anyway. And then that's big activism with a big A, and then the little activism with a little a, working at school to kind of combat a professor who had been homophobic and sexist, working to get the LGBT network into the diversity committee, which we successfully did before the end of the year with the support of an amazing dean at Fordham called Dean Furyk. So it's very interesting. So there were like these battles, but I just did them. I didn't really consciously do any of it. I didn't go to school and say, I'm out and I'm going to change things. I just think I see things that I know are wrong and I want to fix them and I want to speak up and I want to speak out. And I also don't know how to not be me. So if I have negative responses from people just for being who I am, I'm also going to have to handle that and figure out how to navigate that. But I'm not going to sit around quietly and allow people to be disrespectful. But at the same time, you have to learn how to operate within the system you're in, how to navigate within the system. So we worked with the dean to challenge those things. The dean supported us in those challenges, and we were successful in addressing them within the system. And I think that's an important thing that people lose now in today's world is they make things much more binary and black and white. They think that, activism means, quitting your job, putting out a public statement, where really the hard work about changing organizations and doing organizational change, whether it's inclusion, whether it's talent, whether it's legal ops, whether it's, advocating for a client, you have to learn to work within the system. You have to learn to understand how things work, learn how to influence people, bring them with you, and how to make incremental changes that are meaningful over time. That's what the hard work is done. So if you think about the rights that we've won in the past 50 years around LGBT plus, they were not the Stonewall riots and people rioting. And, there's even debates as to whether bricks were thrown or not, but whether bricks were thrown or whatever that riot looked like, that kicked off the movement. But the hard work and the hard changes came from people working within corporations, working with the government, lobbying. The same thing over here in the UK when Stonewall started here, when you had it's important that people like Peter Tatchell are outside of Parliament with signs and picketing, and we had lesbians paragliding inside Parliament. Those people bring attention to causes, but then you need the next phase of the work is having people like Stonewall and Ian McKellen walking in and talking to John Major in a three-piece suit. And it's like, do you want to talk to the guy outside yelling with the picket fence, or do you want to talk to Gandalf? And, the politicians go, Gandalf, Gandalf. And then Ian's able to do that, and a lot of other people. So there's a lot of hard work and graft that's happened behind the scenes that I think often is underappreciated now by people who don't quite understand the history or know the history. And there's a lot of sort of myth building around how our rights got here. But I think that's also why I've been slipping back the past 10 years, because people have lost their way on what the playbook is that got us to where we are. And instead of building and moving forward, we've actually been engaging a lot of activity that doesn't move us forward, but actually is even potentially moving us nowhere or moving us backwards. So I think it's a very important moment now to think about that. So for my personal journey, I got involved in doing that work early on. I then really kind of went underground and just worked, because I think when you start working at a law firm, you work so many hours. There really isn't time to do those things or think about those things. It's one thing as a student. So then I think I didn't really kind of reemerge until 8 years later. But there was a big difference between New York and London. So that was a big shock for me. Working for 2 years in New York in the late 90s, it has been memorialized by Sex and the City. There were LGBT plus people everywhere. People were out. Organizations, even though the law wasn't there in New York City at law firms, they created domestic partner benefits. They mirrored everything you'd have through marriage for LGBT plus people, because they knew that talent was important. So you didn't need marriage, because you could get healthcare benefits for your partner. You could get whatever benefits you want. They had domestic partner policies that mirrored and gave you all of those rights.
And New York was one of the first.
New York was one of the first, and most major cities in America were already doing that.
Okay.
So America is a little bit different from the UK, because in the UK, the law, because of the way there's sort of grassroots activism, and there's more frequent elections and more accountability from voters, the law follows when the majority of people support something. So you have stuff like that ground swelling up, and then when it becomes kind of the majority of people support equal marriage, then a law like that can get passed. We're here in Europe and in the UK, this is changing now, but you used to see that things like the Equality Act get passed, and then society plays catch up. So even though on the books, when the Equality Act hit, technically people would say, oh, look how great it is here. But actually, I think if you looked at large cities here in Europe and large cities in America, you would see that LGBT plus people do much better in the States, even if their legal rights aren't ahead. Now, this is a generalization, but this is also from my experience. So my experience in New York was being LGBT plus, which much less of an issue. It was a much bigger issue when I came to London. I felt like I was stepping back in time decades when it came to that. I mean, walking down the street, being called names in the middle of Old Compton Street, being beaten up on Old Compton Street and put in the hospital in 2004, missing weeks of work because I had my nose broken and my face cut open with a box cutter. I mean, that stuff was shocking to me, because I lived in New York from 95 to 2000 and I saw one act of violence in 5 years against a trans woman on 8th Avenue. And within 2 minutes, 2 bouncers interceded to help the trans woman. And within 5 minutes, the police were there arresting the aggressor. When I was attacked here, hundreds of people were around me. It was Old Compton Street on a Friday night at 10 o'clock. Everybody watched. Nobody helped. Nobody called the police. And people joined in to attack. So to me, it was really different. So things have been really different here. So I do think that people get a little bit wrapped up in kind of what does equality look like on the law. And just because the law is advanced doesn't mean that society matches where the law is. So to me, I'm much more interested in what are people's experiences in their private lives within the work we do with the Indian Law Diversity Forum? What are people's professional experiences like? What do people experience at work? What is their pay like? Do they experience bullying and harassment? Do they feel like they're getting fair and transparent promotion and work allocation and pay? Those are the things I'm really interested in, because the law is great, but women have been equal pay on the books since like the 70s or the 60s, and we're still doing gender pay gap reports, and we're still doing terribly on them, right? So the law is the beginning. We need to be doing the work to get to that equality in society and within the workplaces. And that's, I think, kind of where we've lost our way a little bit with DEI work, is it's really important that we think about what is the data, where do we sit, and then what do we need to do to make progress and move forward. And that progress is going to be incremental. It is going to take time. But what we certainly need to do is make sure that we are looking at the data to tell us where are we doing well, where have we made advancements, and where have we not. And that is the good news. I think we made a lot of advancements over the past 25 years that I've been in the UK. Huge. So the past 2 decades, we've seen a huge improvement, not just in society, but within the legal profession. And I think we are at kind of a critical moment now where we need to make sure that we take stock of that, make sure that we don't move, that we keep making progress and that we don't stand still or move backwards. And when it comes to LGBT plus rights, in many ways we have stood still, and in some ways we seem to be slipping backwards. So we're at quite an important moment.
So I'm a big advocate and believer in the power of mentorship. So we've spoken about allies, and allies are obviously fantastic and help kind of progress where we are. But in terms of mentorship, is there anybody that stands out for you, Dan, as someone who has played a significant role in your professional growth, who was there from maybe early on?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely, I think, are three people that I would quickly name. So I've already referred to Dean Furyk,
Mm-hmm.
who was at Fordham. So Dean Furyk kind of supported me when I was experiencing some quite negative stuff. He also was very supportive of the LGBT plus network, joining the diversity committee, which he chaired. And he went about that in a really interesting way, which again was really looking to show how you engage with people, you work with people, you win over hearts and minds, but then also when you need to, you just lay down the law of the land. The next person who was really, really instrumental is someone named Bert Hunter. Bert was the international general counsel at Schering-Plough Pharmaceuticals. So my first legal job was working my second summer between my second and third year of law school. I worked at Schering-Plough Pharmaceuticals, and the GC hired me on the recommendation of Dean Furyk. I ended up working for Bert, and Bert liked me so much that he then hired me to work 2 days a week throughout my third year of law school. So I shifted my classes to 3 days a week, and I spent 2 days a week at Schering-Plough. So Bert was really instrumental in mentoring me, supporting me, taking me for walks. There was like a Japanese garden at Schering-Plough's headquarters in New Jersey. I'd take the train out. There was like a pierogi factory near the train stop. I'd go out to Schering-Plough. He would take me on these lunchtime walks and really give me lessons and support me. And he helped me secure my first legal role as well in New York. And then the third person who I think is really, really instrumental is Mike Francis at Wall Gottschall. So Mike just stepped down after over 25 years of running the London office. So I worked for Mike from 2000 to 2005. And Mike really took an interest in making sure, again, that I was treated fairly, treated well, and also made sure I got really good opportunities within business. And I would say that the key work I did on my CVs, working with private equity houses, working with major investment banks, doing huge marquee deals in M&A and capital markets for really, really big brands and names. Mike was hugely responsible for that and has been great in guiding me. And I see Mike regularly since I left 20 years ago. So I'm really grateful to him. And I know that, many people have that story to share about him, but he is truly an exceptional person, and that he worked harder than anyone I knew, super smart at the day job, but also always had time for people and always cared about people, and a really ethical, caring, kind person.
So we've touched on the Interlaw Diversity Forum a few times now. Just for our viewers, listeners, can you just give me a bit of a breakdown on what that is, what you do, and just why it's so important?
Yeah, as I said, I started Interlaw 17 and a half years ago. So it was in 2008 when I just became a salaried partner at Simmons & Simmons. And becoming a partner, I mean, that is the interesting thing about being LGBT, is I never thought I could be a partner. So I didn't walk around. I mean, I just thought I was lucky to have a job. So I didn't think I could ever be a partner. I thought someone openly gay could not be a partner at a law firm. In London, I knew we had an openly gay partner at Weil in New York, but we didn't have one in London, and I didn't know of any. So I didn't think that was possible. So I just thought I was lucky to have a job. But then I did it, and I got there, and I was able to take a breath. And I thought, okay, well, I'm here. That's great. And I want to do great work at Simmons & Simmons to make sure Simmons & Simmons is a great place. And the reason why I went there is because at the time, they were one of 3 law firms in all of the UK that had an LGBT network. And they're one of the 3 law firms in all of the UK that monitored sexual orientation. So I ended up there because of that work they were doing. But I thought, what can I do to help and support others? So I've been running a group called the Forum for US Securities Lawyers in London to bring people together to talk about US securities issues. So I brought together US securities practitioners from all the firms, US and UK. I brought together bankers who worked in capital markets. I brought together the exchanges, settlement systems, and other intermediaries to talk about how US securities impacted us. I thought, well, if I can do it in capital markets, why don't we do it in diversity? So I kicked that off as an LGBT plus because I thought, well, if there's only 3 networks, there must be all these people like I used to be spread around. And when I left my firm before Simmons and Simmons, 2 young LGBT trainees had just started. And I thought, well, they're sitting at a firm with no network, no diversity committee, no representative. What can I do to support them? So I thought, well, I'll just make a space once a month where we can all come together very quickly. I mean, it was a huge kickoff. We went from 120 people signing up, over 70 people showed up. The next month, we did a launch event with allies that Simmons and Simmons hosted at the National Gallery. And I think we had 350 people at the kickoff event. So it was huge. Interlaw was huge. And we started doing research right away. Lord Justice Etherton, who unfortunately just passed away, is another person who's a huge mentor to me and a supporter. And he would call me in and he would say, the Law Society is doing a study on sex and race, but they're not doing LGBT. I can't be an activist, but you can. He would send me forth to tell me, go talk to these people. So Terry was so passionate and he was great about guiding me because I wouldn't have known about those opportunities. And I probably didn't know enough to know that that was maybe controversial or difficult to do, but I went in and did it. So we started doing research right away, working with the SRA, working with the Law Society, working with the Bar Council, Judicial Appointments Commission. I ended up sitting on their diversity committee. So Interlaw exploded. We did a lot. In 6 years, we went from having no employers in the top 100 employers of Stonewall Index from the legal sector to having 17. We went from being second from the bottom as a sector to number 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went from having 3 law firms monitoring sexual orientation and having a network to almost everyone doing it within 6 years. The Equality Act helped with that, but it was more than that. I was going around to management at firms and saying, you need to ask this question. You can't ask the other protected characteristics and not ask about sexual orientation and gender identity. Good practice is always to say decline to answer. So if people think it's a private matter, they can decline to answer. But if you don't ask the question, you could be sending a message that there's an issue. So that was hugely successful. And then kind of a few years later, we started doing more research reports. We looked at the Career Progression Report, which looked at almost 1,800 people from the legal sector across LGBT plus, race, ethnicity, women, social mobility, and disability. And looking at that in particular, that kind of shaped our work moving forward. And within a few years, we launched a race ethnicity network. So I think around 2016, so maybe it's about 9 years old now, we launched that network. And again, one of those things where there were all these ethnic minority lawyers finally getting hired, their attrition rates were quite high. I saw them leaving quite quickly. And we did a launch event for that network with over 200 people. And that was a huge kickoff. And then we added those other areas. So now we cover LGBT plus, race, ethnicity, disability, social mobility, and I left one out. But so race, ethnicity, LGBT plus, women, social mobility, disability. Okay, so we looked at all those 5 key characteristics. Those are the same key characteristics the SRA monitors. So now we're at 9,000 members and supporters from over 800 organizations. We do over 40 events a year. We continue to do research. We continue to meet with organizations. We continue to work with the regulators and other organizing bodies within the law. We run a network for in-house counsel. We run the UK Model Diversity Survey to kind of collect talent data on behalf of over 45 clients with 30 law firms participating. It's a lot of stuff. And I think, this work is important because talent is everything at law firms.
Absolutely.
So regardless of the moment that we're in, whether you're a law firm, whether you're an in-house team, all we're doing is selling ideas to clients. If we don't have the best people, and that's lawyers and business services, if you're not doing your best, if I'm not doing my best, and my team aren't the best, I can't provide the best service to my clients. So talent's never going to go away. This work is never going to go away. It's in everyone's interest to make sure that we're recruiting, retaining, and promoting the best talent, period. And if we believe that talent is equally distributed, that means you should have a representation from different groups. If everyone's grouped in one area, that should make you slightly worried, right? So since we recruit, for example, if you look at sex, we recruit about 55 to 60% women, 40 to 45% men. Why, when we get to equity partnerships, are they still 25% or less women, and the other is men? That would tell us that we might have an underrepresentation of talent from women. Sorry, an underrepresentation, of talent from women, and perhaps an overrepresentation from men. So it's not about favoring women to do favors for women to get them in. It's about saying if we think talent's equally distributed, we should be seeing more equal distributions, and it certainly should be reflecting who we're recruiting at the bottom. We should be able to retain and promote that talent. And either we are wrong in who we're recruiting at the bottom, or we need to get the top right. And I think looking at our research, you see that there are huge differences between how people experience the same organizations if they are diverse or socially mobile. So it is about the organization, it is about the culture, it is about thinking about where the barriers are or where there are impediments to work allocation, promotion, pay, and trying to fix those continually. That's what this work is about. It's not about favoring groups or making new favorites. It's about just making sure you have the best talent. And that's what we really do. Everything within Interlaw is driven through, we want to be data driven. We want to rely on numbers and facts to shape the work that we do. We want to talk about cultural change. We want to talk about leadership, allyship, cultural transformation. That's what really is I'm really passionate about. It's not about box ticking. It's not about, events are important and events can be catalysts for change, but it's a very small part of what this work is actually about.
And just to kind of, to magnify the success and the role that the Interlaw Diversity Forum is playing now, you referenced to, I think, 350 people attending the launch at the gallery at Simmons some time ago. How many members do you have now?
So we have over 9,000 members now and supporters on our list, and they're from over 800 organizations. So it's a lot of people. It's a huge reach. It's definitely all about collaboration and inclusion. We have almost 20 member organizations that help support the work that we do. But really, we are a grassroots organization that's about supporting individuals from the bottom up, knowing that they face challenges from the research that we have, also inspiring people to be allies and enabling them to be better allies, giving them information. And then, as I said, working with organizations, and then going up as well and working with regulators and government bodies and to get to the profession from the top down. So we kind of work at every level to bring about and be catalysts for that change.
Okay. It's just fascinating. And I encourage everybody. There's a LinkedIn group, isn't there, for the Interlaw Diversity Forum?
There's not a LinkedIn group, but there is a mailing list. So if you just go to interlawdiversityforum.org, you can sign up at the bottom of the page to our mailing list. There's a button there for upcoming events. There's a button that has our publications on the website. All our publications are free and open to everyone, so you can look at the research reports I'm talking about. There's a career progression report from 2012, an update from 2021 sponsored by the SRA. We've got an update coming out later this year for 2025 that again looks at those 5 key characteristics and sees where we've come from 2012 and 2021 to now. That'll be coming out later this year. There's also a guide on best practice in data collection if your organization's looking to collect data, whether it's for the SRA or wider. We also have a really good inclusive recruitment toolkit that Taylor Root sponsored.
Wow,
That's it's like 27 pages. It's amazing. It looks at every stage of recruitment and gives you tips on inclusion around disability, race, LGBT, again, all those key areas, and social mobility. It's a huge, huge resource. And again, all of that's free. It's on the website. And then there's an upcoming events button where we have, as I said, 30 to 40 events a year that are free and open to everyone. So
amazing. So in terms of you as a professional, Dan, so I wanted to talk a bit around, your role, as a GC now. You've worked in-house, and I just wanted to get your personal view on what I call law firm collaboration. So kind of lightening the load on the in-house team and adding real value. So with that said, in your view, what differentiates a truly valuable law firm partner? And I mean partner in a sense as partnering with you, from one that just provides legal services?
Yeah, well, I think, this is something we've done together before. I mean, to me, it's really taking the time to build real relationships and try and understand your client, understand how they're structured, understand what their needs are, understand the context of the advice that you're giving. I think also looking at those extras. So are you collaborating and talking with them about best practice around legal ops? Are you offering up training and development? Are you looking for ways to partner maybe around talent programs or leadership work? I think there's just a lot of opportunities to build things in a really meaningful way. And I think in ways that kind of are outcomes focused. So not just kind of cynical, let's all have drinks together or let's do a party. I think looking for ways that are really meaningful activities that not only motivate individuals and build relationships with individuals, but also work to kind of grow the culture together. Because if you look at law firms and in-house teams, I think we have a lot more in common than different.
Hmm.
There are differences that people need to understand to partner well.
Yeah.
But I also think when it comes to things like talent, we have a lot more in common. So I think there's a lot of opportunities that people miss out on. And I also think it can't just be we come, we do your work, and then we disappear until you call us again to do more work.
Right.
I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
it's filling in those gaps. It's having ongoing meetings and building real relationships with people is something I think that's harder and harder in this day and age because people are very focused on what's in front of them. And I think a lot of law firms become too internally focused on their politics and how they work. And there's too many rules for partners. And there's not enough of a focus on really encouraging people to encircle clients, build relationships. And I often think the way the comp systems are done, there's not enough sharing of credit around the soft work of building relationships um, and building credit and work. There's kind of too much connection to the first introduction or the panel appointment and not enough credit for people who go out there and grow business from an existing client or just continue work coming in because just because someone makes an opportunity happen, that person does the graft day in and day out
Mm.
to keep the client happy, to keep the work flowing and keep the work coming is equally important to the relationship, if not more. Because an opportunity is an opportunity, but if the people aren't day to day able to do the work, but it should be credit sharing. So it should feel like there's always enough of the pie to go around and there's too much of a zero sum game, which I think then keeps people from engaging in the kinds of behaviors you want to engage them in. So the whole comp system and how people get credit should be based around those behaviors that you're interested in driving that really lead to long-term billing. Because the other thing is when people engage in the activities that are not kind of client first and client focused, it's really obvious to clients. And they're not going to say anything to you, but you hurt your relationships. I think it's very important to think about being inclusive, being supportive. And that also means promoting and developing talent, pushing people forward, getting younger people to have that opportunity, helping get people to partner, involving clients and supporting that. Because I think we want to support talent. If someone's been doing our work for 8 years as an associate, it would behoove us to help that person get to partner
Yeah.
because we want that person to stay at the firm. We want their knowledge and expertise there. And that's a critical part of a relationship. So I think we also all, as in-house counsel, need to speak up more and push more and speak out more kind of about the teams and about the talent and get more involved. That's another way to build relationships.
Because I think ultimately is that kind of relationships going towards being more transactional. In that lies the issue, right? Like to your point, it's you don't want to be conversing with people when there's a piece of work you need them to do. They do it. You don't hear from them for 2 years. How do they then really know what the business needs if they're not having that open and ongoing dialogue?
Yeah, and I think it's about also like learning to understand kind of what are the drivers. So I think also clients need to understand how law firms work. Clients
Hmm.
need to understand how that credit system works. So it's like, saying to your client partners, you know, we think this associate's great. We'd like them to be a partner. How can I help support that? Or I think you're great. Are you getting credit for this work? What can I do to help and support you? Is there someone I can write to? Is there someone I should say they're doing a great job on this work? So I think that's a two-way street, learning about each other and understanding each other and getting the drivers. I do think often that's something that I bring to the table in my role because I was in law firms for 23 years before I went in-house. And I've been an equity partner for 10 years and a salaried partner for 3 years before I went in-house at multiple firms, both US and UK. So I very much understand more, not perfectly, but more what those drivers are look like and what those drivers are. And I try and bring that information to bear. But I think that law firms have to remember that a lot of clients have never been partners at law firms. They've been in-house since quite a junior level. So they don't understand how law firms work and what the politics are. So don't make assumptions either about what they know about you. I think it's a two-way street. I think law firms have to understand clients better, but clients also put the work into understanding their firms, and they're each different, and you have to address them and build relationships with them as individuals.
Mm. It's really interesting because in my exchanges and interactions with you, I think that I've definitely seen that it's somebody that understands kind of both sides of the fence. Just in the way I remember having a conversation where we was talking around panels and I think the natural kind of view of GCs would generally be, let's spread this as thin as we can and try and, kind of water as many holes as we can to a certain extent. And your view is more like, yes, but there's a lot more value for us to be derived from law firms by ensuring that the spend was at certain levels, because inadvertently as a business we then get more back from those deeper relationships. And that it sounds so simple, but actually is quite profound in the way you positioned that when we were working together. So I as I say, I've seen that firsthand. And so how can firms better align with in-house priorities of teams like yourself that are operationally looking at the broader piece, how the business becomes more efficient, as opposed to going back to the point on being transactional? There's some legal advice, some support we need. How can law firms do that? How can they be better at that, Dan?
I think it's about looking at like, how do you build any relationship? I think it's the same conversation you'd have with someone who works on your team. What's going well?
Mm-hmm.
What are you happy with? So, you're talking to the law firm can ask the client, what's going well? What are you happy with? And then it's, where can we do better? Where do you want more? What else can we do for you? I think often, again, those conversations don't happen. It's very transactional. We do a transaction. I think doing postmortems on big deals is really important too. Yeah. I think saying, what are the lessons learned? So really, like, concretely, what did not go well? What went well? What did not go well? How do we do it better is a critical thing to ask at the end of a deal. Because I often think people want to sweep the negative stuff under the carpet, and then you're losing the opportunity to learn. You're losing the opportunity to relationship build. And then I think you have wider conversations like that in between transactions to just talk about generally within the relationship, what's going well, what's not going well. Like, there are sometimes firms where consistently partners pitch low, bill high. They don't keep people informed as they go along. Those are conversations you should be having. And if you give someone the opportunity to say what's going well, what's not going well, they could say to you, well, actually, and you can say, how are we doing on billing? Are we meeting your expectations? Have there been overruns? How have those been handled by our partners? Because I often think if you don't ask, you're not going to hear that. And sometimes people make a choice to not share that. But I think if you're brave and you're willing to dig in and kind of rip the Band-Aid off, maybe you're going to hear that it's all great. Maybe you're going to hear there's some challenges, but then address them. Because those are the kinds of things where it's like, if someone's a good lawyer and that's an area of improvement for them, then that's something the firm can help them with, right? Because I help myself. If that happens, I will go to a partner and say, you are now going to send us weekly updates of where we are on the clock, and you're going to tell us weekly updates of if there's anything out of scope. And just do that every week. I mean, that's something they don't have to do. They can get an associate, they can get someone else on the team to do it. But that's good discipline. And I mean, firms could put that in place without me asking for it.
Yeah.
So I think it's being brave about what isn't going well, how can we improve, where can we go better, both doing that post-mortem, but also doing that from a wider relationship perspective. Because it seems like there's always a focus on how do we get more work, where do we get more work? But what's actually more helpful for me is, here's work we're doing for other investment banks that we think we could help you with. Mm-hmm. And the answer could be yes or no, but rather than just come to me and say, well, where else can I get work? It's more like, well, this is where we think we have expertise to offer you, knowing that every firm can't do everything everywhere for everyone. I think it's knowing who you are by jurisdiction, knowing who you are by product, and really cross-selling in a smart way, right?
And it's interesting you say that. It's a perfect segue into the next kind of topic I wanted to touch on around trust and transparency. Because, I mean, my question was going to be around the most effective ways that you've seen legal departments build trust within the relationships. But it's kind of cyclical, isn't it? It goes back to your point. It's listening to the negative elements as well. Because, quite frankly, if that's so invaluable for a law firm, because the likelihood is if they're doing something that's not hitting the spot for you, they're probably doing that for other GCs as well.
Well, I mean, if you think about, so, when you look at your question about legal leadership, trust and transparency, that conversation about relationships between law firms and in-house counsel is the same conversation as you'd have about building relationships within legal departments, but also outside of legal departments across other cross-function teams. We call them corporate at Jefferies. So finance, compliance, technology, risk. it's really important that you work together and collaborate. It's really important that you build relationships outside of the day-to-day. It can't just be you transact. I think it has to be you invest in those relationships. You're open, you're transparent. We recently had a new head of one of these functions start, and I met with that person today. They've been in post for about, I think, 6 to 8 weeks. And I was very open. And I said, look, here's 3 things your predecessor could have done better. Here's 3 things that are easy wins for you, that if you get this stuff right, you're going to knock this out of the park. And by the way, everyone here wants you to succeed. Everyone here wants to support you. We really do have a nice group of people here. So all of this is being offered as a way to be constructive and helpful and supportive. And by the way, my door is open all the time, whether you have a direct problem within your area or whether you just want to ask me a question about how to navigate politics or how to navigate an issue or how does this work? Just my door's open. I'm here to help and support. So I think creating those relationships, investing in them, and then we walked out of the room saying, well, let's set up a 30-minute meeting every month. Maybe we don't have it every month. We cancel it if we don't need it, but that gives us a spot to visit with each other. And so I think you do have to invest in those relationships and build in those relationships. And they're not going to do that by themselves. So that's true whether it's your outside counsel, whether it's members of your team, whether it's your colleagues internally, at kind of those business services or corporate functions, or whether it's your internal clients. It's all managing stakeholders. You've got a whole range of stakeholders to manage. And that is the harder job about being in-house, is that these people are all stakeholders that you manage, where if you're in private practice, you're kind of as a partner at the top of the food chain, quote unquote, and then everyone sort of reports to or works for you because you are the owner of the business, where all those people shift to be your colleagues. Now, I think that culture is changing a lot. It's less command and control. Business services and the respect to business services is much more important. People understanding the importance of that better. One of the projects we're doing in Interlaw is a research piece on business services, to look at how business services are doing and what the state of play is and what's going well and where there are issues. I'm not aware of research being done in that before. So that's something that we're working on to look at. But, overall, the answer to all of that, I think, is, I think of Sarah Blomfield, who is the general counsel for EMEA at Evercore, who's one of my first clients, but also a very good friend of mine now. And Sarah, described a general counsel as being the conductor of the symphony. So it's our job to sort of work with all the different groups, make sure that everyone's working together, make sure there's interconnectivity, give guidance, and kind of convene and bring people together. I also think the less elegant way of putting it is we're kind of the concierge service, right? People come to us and ask us, and then it's our job to go behind the scenes and make stuff happen and figure out what is the art of the possible. We do a lot more than just what's the law, what's your advice, what's the risk. I think we have a big role to play in bringing people together, creating kind of business-focused solutions for the business, for our clients. That means working with outside counsel, working with all the people in corporate business services, working within our own team, and working with our clients to get to the right answer. It is, when it works well, I think you're the conductor of a symphony, but it's very delicate work, and it takes a lot of time and energy and investment. And it is, as I said, kind of a little bit different and a shift from what a law firm partner does.
So I think the common theme across all of that is people, and I'm a firm believer that it's very hard for somebody to be able to perform to their best if they're not in a environment that enables them or allows them to be their true authentic self. So how do firms create psychological safety within their teams, within their people, to ensure that people feel that comfort?
So, I think it's about, it kind of, the answer was in the question. I think people have to lead with authenticity. I think you have to be transparent. We did a pulse survey about kind of the headwinds in the US around DEI and how that's impacting the UK legal sector. And a big piece of the outcomes of that was about communications. Law firms that were being transparent, were being open and regular in their communications, that were showing support of their talent and ongoing support, came out well. People were proud of their employers. They were engaged. They were happy. The firms where there was not communication, or that communication was done in a negative or an untransparent way, that was not ending well. Those people felt demotivated, devalued, scared,
Mhm.
worried, having mental health issues. I mean, you're not going to be getting the best out of your team if people are not sleeping at night for fear of losing their job just for being diverse or socially mobile. So there's a huge opportunity now, but I think generally speaking, for us to be communicating in clear and concise ways, even if those messages are challenging. So in that Pulse research as well, we saw that firms that were saying, we're reviewing some of what we're doing, we might be changing some of what we do, that was okay with people. And they weren't making large public statements because people were understanding you can't do that necessarily right now. That was still okay with people. People were okay with that. But what people were not okay with was a lack of communication and a lack of transparency and a lack of honesty. People just want to know where they stand, right?
So is that in the sense of like firms acknowledging, you know, what it's okay to not have all the answers and just really trying to understand more what they need to do?
Absolutely. So we're in the process of reviewing what we're doing. We will keep you updated. But in the meantime, we value our staff. We support all of you. Our talent is essential to us and to our clients and to our success. And we are here to support you, and we will continue supporting you. And that may look different, but we're going to continue. And also, I think, thinking about in this moment, it's a moment of deregulation. Now, what might not be okay in the US or might be considered risky would be okay in the UK because we have our employment law context hasn't changed here. The Equality Act hasn't changed. The SRA and the Legal Services Board look at those same 5 characteristics I talked about earlier, and they monitor them, but we have obligations within the profession to promote those within the profession. So it's just different. So unfortunately, you can't kind of you might have a set of values for your organization, but how you implement them and what that looks like might be quite different jurisdiction by jurisdiction. So I don't think a one size fits all approach works anymore. And when it comes to comms and talent and people, we're gonna have to just tailor things a little bit more and think about them in a more complicated way. So life is becoming harder. But I think that also means having communications and two-way streets with people. So, there's been a range of activities around people who have worked with the U.S. government, or have put out statements, or who have filed restraining orders, or made settlement agreements with the government. Those have all been done in really different ways. So even within a partnership, are you consulting your partnership? Have partners been part of those decisions? Once you make those decisions, are they being communicated out to the members of your firm? Are
they being road tested, I suppose, to a certain extent, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, so are people being consulted? But even if they're not being consulted, at least is it being communicated? So, I mean, I've heard of firms where people were finding out what was going on from the press. So, I think there's a huge opportunity to communicate. And as you said, even if that communication means we don't have all the answers, we're not sure what's happening right now, here's what we're doing, we're evaluating this and that, but we are dedicated to the people that we have here. We know that that's our key resource, and we're going to continue supporting the people within the organization and supporting our talent. And it's okay to say you don't have all the answers, or you're reviewing things, or you're changing things. And I thought that was really interesting coming out of that Pulse survey.
So I wanted to ask a couple of quick questions around transformation through kind of operations and innovation. So through that GC lens, what does kind of legal transformation look like for you? Like when we talk about legal transformation and efficiency gains, what does that look like for you, Dan?
Well, I don't think there's a one size fits all answer, because to me, I think that what each GC has to do is look at their team, speak with members of the team, speak with your internal client, speak with your other stakeholders, speak with your outside counsel, and get a picture of what is going well and where there are challenges, and then figure out, how do you address those challenges? How do you become more efficient? How do you, part of that can be looking at your outside spend. We talked about, thinking about how your outside counsel management looks like. What does your spend look like? What is the structure? What is going out, and what are the benefits coming back in? Where are the discounts? I think also looking at efficiency, about how people internally, how things are being resourced. What is the turnaround time? There's all kinds of metrics and KPIs you can look at for what success. But I also think the first conversation has to be had, which is, where are you at? What are your strengths as a department? Where do you have challenges? And then what tools can be utilized to address those challenges? I don't think it's a one size fits all. I don't think you come in and say, here's the thing you need to do. You need to get, for some organizations, the answer might be, let's get in place, more AI, drafting documentation, and get a system put in place. For other places, a priority might be upgrading or investing more in their e-billing system and how they do law firm management.
And the quality of data coming out.
And the quality of data. And we've talked a lot about that. What kind of data are you getting back out of that? Are you using it? And how do you do that? And again, that's a two-way street. How is that benefiting you? But how is that also benefiting the firms that you're working with? It's not just all us client. I think that command and control client law firm model is outdated. It is a symbiotic relationship. You need to be collaborative. You need to work together. It needs to be mutually beneficial. So, and I think when you do that, you can figure out where there are opportunities, and then you can look at the universe of tools when you work with an expert within LegalOps. What are the tools then to address those issues? So I think you want to have the kind of qualitative data, but you also want to develop KPIs and have quantitative data, and then look and identify where are the areas for improvement, and then look at that universe of what are the tools that are available. And then you want to have kind of a 1-year plan, a 2-year plan, a 3-year plan, maybe a 5-year plan of what can you do short term, what are the budgets, what do you need, and then you have to set about getting stakeholder buy-in to develop it, to budget it, and to move it forward. So,
and that was going to be my next question on stakeholder buy-in. I mean, how do you get it? Like, what any kind of golden nuggets here, Dan, in your experience, from how you get that stakeholder buy-in to think about different ways of doing things?
Well, look, I think in every challenge that I've had, whether I've been in-house or whether I've been in a law firm, I think one of the big answers is clients. So I think the issues that clients have are the ones that are going to get, this squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be client-led by this. And I think if you bring those messages from clients, or also I think you can bring those KPIs so I think you want to mix qualitative data, number one, from clients, your key stakeholder. The other stakeholders matter, but that client feedback is the most important, and it's going to unlock change the most. And then number two, I think, is getting the data points, because I think it's hard to argue with hard data. So if you have good metrics and good KPIs that show here's the strengths and the good areas, I think it's important to communicate here's what's going well and here's where we're strong and here's where we have deficiencies, here's what we're going to do. But I also think just as important to get buy-in is what are the solutions you're suggesting and how and why are they effective? So to me, if someone comes to me and says, I want to talk to you about this solution, what I will say is, who else has used it? I want to talk to people who have implemented this successfully.
Yeah.
And I want to hear from them that it works, because there's so many vendors out there and there's so many tools. And the question is, which can actually be implemented in a way that is not going to be a 5-year runway and cost you millions and millions of pounds? What is that, what is effective, and what is going to, and what can you do that kind of a competitor or a business that's comparable to yours has used and has done before? Because I think what most of us don't have the time and energy and resources for, particularly for in-house teams, which are already under budgeted and under resourced, we don't have the time to be your guinea pig to beta test something for you, unless it's a huge company that has the appetite to do that. But the average in-house team can't. And there's too many people out there who want you to partner with them. So I kind of met with someone yesterday who wanted to pitch something to me, and it was a genius idea. And I'm like, well, does this exist? Nope. We're looking for people to come in and beta test it. And I'm like, and what would that cost? And it's like, the answer was £150,000. And I'm like, you are completely...
For you to prove their concept.
Yeah, none of this is happening. I'm like, what you need to do is go build this with somebody. And when you've got something that works and when you've got something that functions, you come back and show it to me, and then we can have a conversation. And then I'm very happy to promote things for you. So I do think that getting people buy-in, it's not just what is the problem, but as I said, what are the solutions? Are those solutions replicable? Are they effective? Are they real? And are they, and what is the budget, and how much is it going to cost? So it is an easy road. There is no easy path. It is any cultural change or transformation is difficult. And I think that that this is slow work that just takes time. You have to be patient. Just like with the people work, I think the legal ops work takes time. It takes working with your stakeholders. It takes communication, and it's something. And I think you have to be incremental and realistic about what you can do and the timescales you need to do it in.
So here's my final question on this, probably more focused on advice for in-house GCs. In practical terms, how do you balance the need for transformation with the day-to-day operational pressures of running a large or even a small legal function?
Well, I mean, that is the challenge. So I think that, so the issue is, how much of an appetite is there for this change? How much resource do you have? I mean, that really is, and how much time do you want to give? And often when you do this kind of work, it means you willing to take your extra time because you're so passionate about this work
Yeah.
that you're willing to take your extra time or any free time that you might have and dedicate it to that for the benefit of the business and for the long-term benefit of your team, the department, your clients, and the other stakeholders. But I also think it's about having management buy-in that they will then support it. But I think that you have to make that business case first. You have to be talking about qualitative and quantitative data, be presenting real solutions, and then you get that support, and then you unlock that resource. But I think that, as I've said, it's a long road and it takes a bit of time and effort. It isn't a simple thing.
Amazing. So I wanted to bring this full circle to the final few questions I had, which were around inclusive leadership and LGBT culture and representation. So how can a GC or any leader bring an inclusive lens to leadership development and team culture?
So I think, if you look at the theme of what we're talking about, I think it's about being authentic. It's about being transparent. It's about communicating with your team, but also meeting with people on an individual level. I think it's really important that create spaces with individuals to talk to them about what is going well. Are they happy? Are they not? What's going well? What isn't going well? And how can they be helped or supported? Sometimes with challenges, people just want to be heard. There are things people tell me and you just think, well, I can't really change that for you, but I know that's difficult. Here's a way to manage it. Here's perhaps the thing I can do to make it a little bit better. But some stuff people just want to hear, I'm sorry that you're dealing with that. It's crap, but it's just something that kind of is the nature of the beast. Other things you can help and support people with, and you can come up with solutions. But a lot of times I think people want to know that you care and they want to hear. And sometimes just sharing the issue is a step forward. Or you can say, I can see why that's frustrating. It's something you're going to have to put up with for now. I have a long-term solution I'm looking at, but you have to give me a little bit of time to fix it. Or can you tolerate this for now? And if it gets worse, let me know. But then some things you do have solutions for and you can fix. But I think it's about being vulnerable and being open. I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. I don't have all the power. I don't have all the budget. No one does. My boss, Mike Sharp, who's the global GC, is great, and he's a good manager, and he's works incredibly hard and cares a lot about his team. Mike doesn't know everything, or Mike can't solve everything. None of us can, right? So we need to be a team. We need to all help and support each other. So I think the more we can be open and transparent and kind of create that culture also where people can speak up if there's an issue, they can come to you, have an open office that's really an open office, make sure you're accessible. And I also think it's about supporting people in the day job, but then also, as I said, doing that soft skills. So I think it's equally important that for key members of my team, some of the people on my team I talk to 3 to 5 times a day, even if it's just to call them to say, checking in, how's it going? Do you need anything? Nope, everything's good. Great. Let me let you get on with your day. But I think making yourself available. If I have 5 minutes between meetings, I will pick up the phone and call people just to say, checking in, or send them a Teams message. How's your day going? Do you need anything? I think that goes a long way. So I think it's being available when people need you, checking in on people, but then also creating those spaces from time to time. You don't have to have a coffee with everybody every week, but key members of your team you should be seeing every month, every 2 months, maybe more junior members of the team you try and see on a quarterly basis. But it's creating spaces, but it's also encouraging people on your team who manage others to be doing that too. It's not all me. It's everyone's responsibility to create that culture.
People like to feel heard.
Absolutely, but also valued and respected and supported. And I think people more want purpose in their roles. So explaining to people why their job matters, explaining to people why they're valued, letting people know that they're valued, letting people know that they're doing a good job. That continual feedback is really important. And it's not that hard to do. It's not that hard to say to someone, thank you for your hard work. Thank you for the great stuff you're doing. You did a really good job on this deal. Thank you for that. People want to hear that. You can't just wait till the end of the year or wait till the 6-month review. You need to be giving people continual feedback. And if there's constructive feedback, have that conversation too. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that. But I think what they don't realize is if you don't give people constructive feedback as you go along, people can read you. So if you're frustrated or irritated, that becomes obvious to people, and it's actually unfair to them if you can't have the conversation with them about what's going wrong and how to fix it. It's very unfair to them to allow them to know that you're frustrated without telling them why or how. And it's just so much better to pull the Band-Aid off, be constructive in how you do it, but let people know constructive feedback. But also that constructive feedback is easier to give if you're also continually giving the positive feedback when it's also due, and it's giving that balance. So
final question: what would be the one piece of advice that you would give to somebody that you wish somebody gave you as you set out on your journey in the world of business?
I think to work incredibly hard. I mean, there is no substitute for hard work. You have to know your craft. This is something that Patricia taught me. This is something that that all of those mentors taught me. Mike, all of those mentors, Mike Francis, they Dean Feerick, they all taught me that you need to work really hard, be excellent at what you do, be compassionate and caring about people. But I think the one thing that I didn't get told enough that I had to figure out on my own was also knowing your own value. You should know what you bring to the party. Again, none of us know everything, but you do have worth and you do have value, and you have to value. As I said, when I was at the beginning of my career, I felt like, well, as a gay man, I'm just lucky to be here. I can't believe I have a job. Like when I came out to my parents, their biggest concern was, will you not have a job ever? Will you not have a family? Will you not have a relationship? And I think I very much internalized that. And then I got to that point where then I didn't have long-term goals. I didn't value what I was doing. I just felt like, well, I'm lucky to be here, so I'm going to tolerate anything anybody does to me to have my seat at the table. And then the inverse of that is then what you're not focusing on is, what is the value? What are you bringing to the table? I think you have to know, and the things that are free, and this is all over the internet, or the interwebs as the kids call it. It's on the gram or the TikTok, but it costs no money to be engaged, be present, put your phone away in a meeting, take notes by hand in every meeting you go to, give people a summary note at the end of the meeting as a junior lawyer, or as someone junior who's in business services. Be enthusiastic, ask questions, learn, be available, be supportive. Ask the people you work with, how can I help you? How can I support you? It's not just for senior people to ask junior people how you can help and support them. Junior people should be asking senior people, how can I help and support you better? Can I write an article with you? Can I do marketing work with you? Why don't we plan a breakfast? Why don't we do a podcast? I think thinking about what you can add and what your value is incredibly important. And then also finding ways to make yourself even more valuable. And you'd be surprised how many people in junior roles are not engaged, they're not present, they're constantly on their phones, they seem uninterested in the work. And also do yourself a favor. If you don't like the work and you don't want to be there, go do something else. There's a lot of people that want your seat and want your job, right? We look through the research we do in Interlaw Diversity Forum. We see that people are, at non-Russell Group universities, they struggle to get a job at all, or they're languishing in paralegal roles where they're finding it difficult to qualify. Getting those people, they would love a seat at a law firm and to have a training contract or or another entry legal role. So apprenticeship was the word I was looking for. So step aside if this isn't what you want to do. People really should follow their passion. I don't think it means you're passionate about doing what you're doing now for the rest of your life. I think jobs aren't forever anymore. But I think you should be staying in a role for at least 3 to 5 years. I think people are switching too quickly now because they're not learning enough, but knowing what you bring to the table. So as I kind of said, be authentic, be transparent, be open, think about what your value is and understand that, but also know what you know and know what you don't know. That's the other huge problem. People seem unable to no one knows everything. We talked about that earlier. No one has the answer to everything. People are paying you to find the answer or get to the answer. So what you want to have is a network, have resources, be smart about knowing how to get there, but don't sit around worrying about what you know, what you don't know, but you should understand where your limitations are. And that's why we work with teams of people. So, that's sort of, it wasn't a punchy answer, I mean, but it was a long answer.
It's interesting.
But it was comprehensive.
No, it was very comprehensive. I think it's interesting as well. I mean, I was about to say this is the first podcast where we haven't mentioned Gen AI, but I'll break that by mentioning Gen AI. But I think the access to knowledge now goes to your point in where, you said that, I think everybody has access to the answer now, but having the answer and understanding the answer are two very different things, right?
And look, Gen AI to me is a tool, but there's an overfocus on it now because it can't do that much right now. right? It's like sitting around obsessing about emails. We didn't have big, long conversations about, I don't have to write letters. I'm now typing an email. I mean, yeah, okay, so there's stuff that you used to do that you now can do faster using Gen AI. And as we go forward, there will be giant leaps and advances, but we're not there yet. So right now, we should understand that Gen AI is a tool that we can use within the frameworks of our organizations, understanding data privacy and law and and all of that. However, it's a bit of a red herring because there's too much of a focus on it, because all this other stuff still matters too. The talent piece, the legal ops piece. You go to these conferences now and 75% of these in now, but it's being driven by the fact that there's all these people out there. But as we know now, like I think, I mean, the stats I saw recently were that, like, in the old day, like maybe 5 years ago, only 1 in 10 AI programs people tried to implement in-house worked, or at law firms worked. Now we're up to maybe like 5 out of 10 work, half of them. Well, that's not really good enough. And so there's a lot of players out there. We'll see more consolidation. We'll see better work. We will see very quick advancement. So I think it is a space to watch, but there's an overemphasis on it because people will never disappear. People freaked out when people introduced private personal computers and said, oh my God, the computers are going to take our jobs. There's going to be, we have seen shifts and changes, but, you still need people, and people will still be around. And maybe, in hundreds of years, there'll be a future where we don't need people anymore, but we are way away from that. And I think there's an overemphasis on AI right now. I think it is another tool and another aspect of the profession that you have to be on top of and you have to understand. So like I have heard people say, like, we have Copilot from Microsoft, and someone said, I'm never hitting that button and using it. I mean, that you can't do. I think we have to embrace it, and whatever is available, learn it and understand it. And it's something to monitor, but there's an overemphasis on it because there's 100 other things you need to worry about that we've talked about on our podcast today to be a good in-house lawyer or a good law firm partner.
A brilliant note to
or a
end
good
on.
Business services leader.
Yeah, a brilliant note to end on. Dan, this has been so educational. I have 1,000 more questions I could ask, but will not ask. But thank you so much.
Join us for our weekly series starting next week.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been an honor to be here to speak.
Thank you. Okay, Dan. So very quickly, let's get into the Mythbusters round. So
okay.
This is what tech looks like, right?
Yes, that's our AI for today.
This is our AI for today. So how this works is I usually asked guests a bit about kind of, phrases, terms, things we're hearing in the hallways at the conferences. And I kind of myth test them against the expert in the room to really understand if there's any value in that as a sentence, as something.
And who's the expert, me or you? I think
You're
we're both
the
experts. I think we're both
You're the
experts.
expert on this. So.
I think we're both experts, but I'm happy to share my views.
All right. So I've got one very powerful question on this.
Okay.
I'm going to put past you. So, and if you don't agree with this, hit the button. If you agree with it, just you could qualify with why you agree with it. So,
okay.
Legal teams don't need KPIs. They're not a sales function.
Okay.
Straight in. Okay.
Okay. So I disagree with that because I think we're not a sales function is true, but we do need KPIs because of what gets measured gets done. And if you don't use KPIs, if you don't use data, you do that at your own peril, because what else are you using to make decisions around what you need to do? So I think, as I said, it's important to use KPIs to get quantitative data, but you also want to use qualitative data. So good data collection is both. And that's how you should be guiding what you do. And if you can't, and you want to be measuring the success of your team, and you want to also be continually fine-tuning to get better, more efficient at what you do. And whether that's speed of delivery, cost of delivery, use of outside counsel, what you kind of in-source, near source, there's a whole lot of things to be looking at, but it's important to be looking at KPIs.
What gets measured gets done.
Yep.
Mic drop moment.
That is it.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you for watching the LOPSided Podcast with me, John O'Donoghue. Don't forget to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn at the LOPSided Podcast. Check out our website at www.thelopsidedpodcast.com, and most importantly, like us and subscribe to us here on YouTube.